Early in the morning in Egypt, the air was heavy with the cries of infants and the terrified screams echoing through the alleys. Pharaoh's soldiers were breaking down the doors of every house, searching for newborns to take their lives. In the small home of an Israelite family, Moses' mother knelt in prayer, tears streaming down her cheeks, while his father stood helplessly, watching his child in fear. The siblings trembled, terrified of the unstoppable cruelty. This was the opening scene of a timeless story, a fateful journey in which the main character Moses would become a symbol of faith, resilience, and the guidance of people out of oppression. But when we look at the same character through a different lens, the truth is far from simple. In Christianity, Moses is the prophet chosen by God, leading the Israelites out of slavery through divine power and direct guidance from God. Stories in the Old Testament emphasize obedience, miracles, and the profound personal relationship between Moses and God. Meanwhile, in Islam, Moses, known as Musa, is also one of the greatest prophets, but the story is emphasized differently. Musa is the bearer of Allah's mission, striving against oppression, and granted power to lead the community, yet every miracle and action serves as evidence of Allah's power, not as a reflection of Musa's personal authority. This raises a fascinating question. How can the same character, the same historical event, be interpreted so differently? In today's video, To Faiths, one question will take you on a journey comparing the differing aspects of Moses' story in Islam and Christianity. We will explore intriguing details, miracles, decisions, and challenges faced by Moses, while recognizing how faith shapes each religion's perspective. One story, but two viewpoints. Are you ready to see Moses through the lens of both faiths? Everything begins in the heart of a mother, Jochebed, who had to face the most painful choice: to keep her child and watch him be killed, or to entrust the baby into the hands of God. According to the Bible, Jochebed prayed through her tears. She believed that God had placed a gentle reminder in her heart: place the child in the river. Do not fear or be sad. And it was this faith that turned a desperate act into a step of trust. Jochebed placed the baby into a small basket, setting it afloat on the flowing Nile River, leaving the child's fate in God's hands. Miriam, Moses' sister, silently followed from a distance. The image was both heartbreaking and powerful: a child carrying the fragile hope that her brother would be saved. Both religions preserve this moment, but the way they recount who found Moses differs. In the Bible, it was Pharaoh's daughter who discovered the basket among the reeds. Moved with compassion for the Hebrew child, she decided to adopt him, opening a pivotal turning point in the history of the Israelites. In contrast, in Islam, the story is told with a different nuance. According to the Quran, the one who saved Moses was Asia, Pharaoh's wife, a pious and compassionate woman, regarded as one of the 4 greatest women in Islam. Asia saw the child, sensed the divinity radiating from him, and persuaded Pharaoh not to kill him, but to adopt him. This difference is not merely narrative, but carries profound theological significance. The Bible emphasizes the intervention of compassion in the heart of Pharaoh's daughter, while the Quran highlights Asia as a symbol of steadfast faith amid the darkness of tyranny. An interesting point in both traditions is the detail that Moses was secretly nurtured by his own mother. When the palace sought a wet nurse for the child, Miriam cleverly suggested Jochebed. Through this arrangement, mother and child were reunited, and Jochebed was both protected and rewarded for raising her own son, a miracle that could only arise from God's perfect plan. In the light of both Islam and Catholicism, the childhood and youth of Moses in Pharaoh's palace bear profound similarities, but also notable differences in how each tradition depicts his journey to maturity. Both affirm that Moses was raised at the very center of Egyptian power, where he had access to an elite education that few could attain. Yet each religion emphasizes specific details, reflecting how they perceive Moses' role in the divine plan. Both traditions recount the event that forced Moses to leave Egypt. He struck and killed an Egyptian soldier who was beating an Israelite. This act caused him to be pursued and forced him to flee into the desert. Catholicism emphasizes his fear and despair, while in Islam, the Quran describes Moses feeling remorse, praying to Allah for forgiveness, and Allah accepting his prayer. The flight lasted 8 days without food, representing a period of severe trial that both traditions retain as a symbol of purification. Upon reaching Midian, the stories of the two traditions diverge in their unique details. In Catholicism, Moses lives with Jethro, the priest of Midian. Jethro becomes his guide, advisor, and future father-in-law, helping him learn humility, responsibility, and leadership. In Islam, Moses lives under the guidance of Prophet Shuaib, a prophet. There, he learns patience, discipline, and spiritual maturity in faith. Despite differences in names and theological emphasis, both Islam and Catholicism depict the time in Midian as an important period of preparation, where Moses transforms from a refugee prince into the chosen one destined to return, confront Pharaoh, and liberate the Israelites according to the plan of God, or Allah. The story of Moses' divine mandate and mission has always been one of the most sacred moments, marking a turning point when an ordinary human is entrusted with the responsibility of delivering a people and conveying God's will. One of the most significant moments is the extraordinary burning bush event on Mount Sinai, where Moses receives his mission. In Islamic tradition, the Quran emphasizes that the bush Moses saw was burning yet was not consumed. The fire was not a destructive fire, but a divine light from Allah, symbolizing his presence and invisible power. Moses heard the call, "O Musa, indeed I am your Lord," and was reassured amid the awe of that magnificent moment. Meanwhile, the Christian Bible describes a bush burning fiercely yet not being consumed, a phenomenon impossible in the physical world, understood as a sign of God revealing himself to Moses. Thus, both traditions agree on the miraculous nature of the fire, but with different theological nuances. In Islam, it represents the illumination of Allah. In Christianity, it signifies the presence of the Lord Yahweh. From that very sacred moment, Moses was entrusted by God with a great mission. In Islam, Allah guides Musa to perform miracles, turning his staff into a serpent, placing his hand into his garment and pulling it out radiant white, serving as a testament to God's power and the justice Musa carries. In the Bible, the miracles are similar, but their purpose is emphasized clearly, to provide Moses with sufficient evidence to convince the Israelites that God truly sent him to deliver them from Egyptian slavery. Thus, in Islam, the miracles serve as both an invitation and a warning, guiding the misguided, especially Pharaoh, back to the right path. Whereas in Christianity, the miracles are tools for Moses to lead the Jewish people out of oppression and begin their journey of faith. An interesting similarity between the two traditions is the role of Moses' brother, Aaron Harun. In the Bible, Aaron is chosen as Moses' spokesperson because of his superior ability to communicate. In the Quran, Harun is not only a supporter, but is also granted prophethood by Allah, becoming a true prophet who shares the burden of the mission with Musa. This elevates Harun's position in the Islamic account compared to the Christian one, highlighting the two brothers' companionship and a divinely appointed team. Continuing the previous narrative, when Moses had received his mission and returned to Egypt to confront the dark power of Pharaoh's court, both the Bible and the Quran depict the prophet's first confrontation with the king as in a major turning point. Moses, with courage granted by God, stood before the Egyptian throne and delivered the message, "Let the people of Israel go." This was not only a request to free an oppressed people, but also a direct challenge to the authority that Pharaoh considered divine. The Bible portrays Pharaoh as arrogant, cruel, and stubborn. He responded with pride, declaring himself a god, refusing to acknowledge the existence of the God of Israel. Meanwhile, the Quran profoundly emphasizes the sinful aspect of self-exalting power, as Pharaoh mocked Moses, considering him merely an ordinary, weak man who could not challenge the Egyptian monarchy. Both traditions describe how Pharaoh sought to manipulate the people, sowing doubt about Moses to maintain his own power. In this confrontation, Moses performed his first miracle signs proving that he was sent by God. Both the Bible Exodus 4 and the Quran Surah Taha al-Ayaf recount that Moses threw his staff to the ground and it turned into a living serpent. When he placed his hand inside his cloak and then drew it out, his hand became radiant, shining white as light before returning to normal. These signs not only demonstrated the power of God, but also served as a warning to Pharaoh. True authority did not belong to the Egyptian king, but to the Supreme Being. However, the theological difference between Islam and Christianity becomes evident when describing the significance of these miracles. In the Quran, the miracles are emphasized as direct proof of faith in Allah, and as an affirmation that all power comes from Him. The primary purpose was not merely the physical deliverance of Israel, but to guide humanity toward eternal salvation, the restoration of faith, and submission to Allah. The miracles were presented clearly and publicly, strongly emphasized in their role of strengthening the faith of both Moses and the community. In the Bible, the focus of the story is on the journey to liberate the Israelites from slavery, a salvation of a temporal nature, but one that paves the way for the greater covenant between God and His people. Notably, the Bible does not emphasize the first miracle immediately during the initial encounter with Pharaoh. The confrontation in the book of Exodus centers more on Pharaoh's refusal and the preparation for the plagues that will follow. Although signs were given beforehand to strengthen Moses, the Bible portrays them as private confirmations before he enters the stage of manifesting God's power through the 10 plagues. Following the events from the first confrontation with Pharaoh, the story in both Catholicism and Islam is to one of the most decisive moments, the miracle contest between Moses and the Egyptian magicians. This is not only a clash between divine power and human magic, but also a demonstration of how the two religions depict historical and theological truth from very different perspectives. In both traditions, Pharaoh, wanting to prove that Moses was merely a low-class sorcerer, summoned the best magicians of Egypt before the public. However, the context as described by the two religions differs significantly. In the Quran, the contest takes place on a national holiday, in the morning, precisely when the population is largest. Many Islamic scholars associate this event with the ancient Egyptian Opet festival, a significant occasion when the people gathered to honor the god Amun and the pharaohs. Placing the contest within a festival only heightens the dramatic tension, but also reveals Pharaoh's intention to use the crowd to discredit Moses. In contrast, the Bible does not mention a holiday or any public event. The confrontation is narrated as an incident within the palace, not intended to attract the public. When the contest began, the Egyptian magicians demonstrated their skills. They threw staffs and ropes to the ground, making them appear like snakes. The Bible describes this as the enchantments of the magicians, while the Quran emphasizes that they used magic to deceive the eyes, creating the illusion of movement. But when Moses threw down his staff, both traditions confirm that a true miracle occurred. Moses' staff turned into a serpent and swallowed everything the magicians had created. This moment marks the clear boundary between divine power from God, Allah, and the limited power of humans. From this point, the differences become striking. In the Quran, the magicians who fully understood the nature of magic immediately realized that Moses could not be a sorcerer. The truth humbled them. They publicly professed faith in Allah despite Pharaoh's threats. As a result, they were executed, becoming the first martyrs in the story of Moses. In contrast, in the Bible, the magicians do not become followers of God. They only acknowledge that this is the finger of God, but do not undergo conversion. They continue to oppose Moses until they are completely defeated by the plagues brought upon Egypt. Another important point is the analysis of historicity. The Quran mentions Haman, an official close to Pharaoh, with a role similar to that of a chief of works. Interestingly, this name and title are found in ancient Egyptian records, creating a rare parallel between religious texts and archaeology. The Bible does not mention Haman, nor does it connect this event to any specific festival. This miracle contest, therefore, becomes a highlight showing how Islam emphasizes public display, the witness of the masses, and the role of history, while Catholicism focuses on the power of God through Moses' actions, without stressing social factors or the festival context. Following the dramatic miracle contest between Moses and the Egyptian magicians, the story in both Islam and Catholicism moves into a new chapter full of tragedy and tension, the struggle between Moses and Pharaoh. After being humiliated before the people, Pharaoh not only refuses to concede, but also intensifies his oppression of the Israelites. He reinstates the order to seize newborn boys and increases forced labor, making the already miserable life of the Israelites even more unbearable. In response to this cruelty, the reaction of the Israelites in both religions is similarly described. They lament, complain, and feel as if all hope is lost. However, the way Moses responds to his people's despair reveals a profound difference between the Quran and the Bible. In the Quran, Moses is described as a steadfast leader with a strong sense of reassurance. He reminds the Israelites that Allah is always just, that he sees their suffering, and that he will judge Pharaoh and his allies. Moses speaks to them about patience, hope, and the day when Allah will deliver them from slavery. In this way, the image of Moses in Islam carries the tone of a prophet who is confident, calm, and unwavering in the face of the enemy's cruelty. In contrast, the Bible portrays Moses with very human depth. He shows frustration, even turning to complain to God himself. "Why have you brought trouble on this people? Why did you send me if you will not save them?" Moses becomes bewildered by the negative reactions of the Israelites and the increasing cruelty of Pharaoh. This difference reflects how Catholicism and Judaism depict prophets. They have emotions, weaknesses, and sometimes do not fully understand God's plan. It is in this context of extreme tension that the series of disasters sent by God upon Egypt begins. Both traditions recount these terrible calamities. The waters of the Nile turn red, and fish die in large numbers. Frogs, lice, flies, and locusts swarm everywhere. Drought, famine, and crop failures. Disease strikes both livestock and people. Nature and life are completely overturned. What is remarkable is that many details in this series of disasters have an astonishing correspondence with an ancient Egyptian historical document, the Apua Papyrus, which describes the Nile turning to blood, the land plunged into chaos, crop failure, rebellion of slaves, and death spreading throughout Egypt. Although scholars still debate the direct relevance, this coincidence adds historical color to the story in both religions. The climax of the prolonged confrontation between the power of God, Allah, and the arrogance of the Egyptian king is the scene of the sea crossing and the destruction of Pharaoh. After the final plague, the death of the firstborn, Pharaoh is finally forced to let the Israelites go. In both traditions, Moses leads the Israelites out of Egypt at night, in an urgent and tense escape. But as soon as they cross the border, Pharaoh changes his mind. He mobilizes chariots, cavalry, and elite troops, determined to pursue and bring the Israelites back into slavery. The Bible describes Pharaoh's anger, while the Quran emphasizes his arrogance and the illusion of power that prevents him from accepting defeat. When the Israelites reach the shore, often referred to as the Red Sea in the Bible, they face a dilemma. Ahead is the vast, impassable sea. Behind is the mighty Egyptian army advancing very close. In the Bible, the Israelites panic, complain to Moses, and doubt the path he leads them on. Meanwhile, the Quran depicts Moses as stronger and more resolute. He declares, "No, God will guide us." At that dramatic moment, Allah commanded Moses to raise his staff and strike the sea. Both traditions recount the magnificent miracle. The sea parted into two massive walls of water, opening a dry path for the Israelites to cross. Moses led the people through the heart of the sea, between the towering walls of water, an image both sacred and overwhelming. Pharaoh and his army continued the pursuit and entered the path between the waters. But when the entire Israelite people had reached the opposite shore, the second command was given. The sea rushed back. The Egyptian army was drowned. Chariots, cavalry, and soldiers were all swept into the sea. However, the most striking difference lies in Pharaoh's final moment. In the Bible, Pharaoh dies along with his army, with no record of repentance or belief in God. In the Quran, Pharaoh believed in Allah, but it was too late. "I believe that there is no deity except the God of the Israelites." Yet Allah responded, "What now? While you were arrogant before." Ultimately, the Quran emphasizes that Pharaoh's body was preserved as a sign for future generations. Interestingly, archaeologists have discovered mummies of many pharaohs preserved perfectly, making this detail even more striking for Muslims. After the magnificent crossing and the complete collapse of Egyptian power, Moses was called by God to ascend Mount Sinai, where he received the Torah, the sacred law written onto stone tablets. This moment highlights Moses' exalted role as the mediator conveying the will of God, Allah. But when he returned after his time on the mountain, the Israelites had fallen into deep apostasy. The most striking difference between the two religions lies in the person who created the golden calf. In the Bible, Aaron, Moses' brother, is described as the one who directly made the statue. This has sparked much theological debate, as Aaron was a priest and regarded as a righteous man. In the Quran, the responsibility entirely belongs to another figure, Samiri, who deceived the Israelites and crafted the statue. This account protects Harun's purity, aligning with the Islamic view that prophets do not commit serious sins related to faith. The story of the golden calf also has an interesting connection to archaeology. The name Samiri is believed to possibly relate to Smeru, a group of Egyptian priests tasked with making statues that could speak, causing the people to believe that the divine was communicating with them. Despite disappointment and anger at the betrayal, Moses remained steadfast in faith, leading the people back to the righteous path. However, the consequence of this weakness was 40 years of wandering in the desert, a period of purification and testing of faith, acknowledged by both traditions as a meaningful stage to prepare the Israelites to enter the Promised Land. Closing the comparison of Moses' story in Islam and Christianity, the most prominent common point is the example of faith, patience, and justice that Moses left for humanity. Though the accounts and details in the Bible and the Quran differ, both traditions affirm that Moses was not only a leader, but also an absolute servant of God. From these two perspectives, the shared message becomes clear. Faith in God always opens the path to deliverance and victory, even when humanity stands in the deepest valleys of despair. Both religions emphasize that patience is a virtue closely linked to Moses' calling. Facing the ruthless Pharaoh, the stubborn people of Israel, or challenges that seemed insurmountable, Moses remained persistent and did not retreat. Islam also provides certain details about Moses that have been confirmed by history and archaeology, making this figure even more vivid in the perception of contemporary Muslims. Despite theological differences, Catholicism and Islam both revere Moses as a symbol of righteousness and faithfulness. His legacy from the tablets of the law the Exodus journey, to his prophetic role becomes a moral and spiritual foundation for billions of believers. The ultimate lesson from Moses, transcending all religious boundaries, is an invitation for each person to place full trust in God, to walk in justice, and to exercise patience in the face of all life's challenges. Thank you for joining to Faiths, One Question Today, exploring the differences and similarities in the story of Moses between Islam and Catholicism. If you found this video useful and want to learn more about meaningful religious stories from multiple perspectives, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss upcoming videos. Please like, comment, share your thoughts, and join our community where faith and knowledge meet. See you in the next video.